You ever get in those situations where you're talking to someone and you're not emotionally involved in the discussion, but the other person is aggravated and excited and mad? And I remember one of those situations a couple years back where I was talking to a sales manager, and I guess he just had a rough day, and no matter what I said, telling him I was agreeing with him, he wanted to argue more and more and more. And finally, I used the academic term, I understand your argument, which meant I understand what you're saying. And well, he went off. I thought this guy was just about ready to lose it. I think he had anger management issues. And I just smiled at him and walked away, and he complained to senior management about me, even though I agreed with him. He just could not comprehend that I was agreeing with him. So, you run into those situations in business. And what I want to talk about today is business communications. I want to talk about how you communicate verbally with other people and how to change their perspective when you're talking to them. Hi, my name is Jim Gibson. I'm with CableSupply.com, Nova Voice and Data Systems, and Blackstone Cybersecurity. Yes, 3 companies we have. But, I want to talk about business communications, interpersonal communications. I worked for Burlington Air Express many, many years ago before I started any of these businesses. And I took care of what they call Burlington Air Express Americas. And Americas was just the USA. I just dealt with all 50 states and things like that. And we had about 250 locations throughout the United States. And, they're mostly at airports, distribution areas. And I had to handle the telephones and the cabling and the data network at these remote locations. And I remember once I got a call from Canada, an employee in Canada. Now, that was outside my area of responsibility, Canada, but I talked to him for a little bit, and he had some sort of difficulty. I had no authority to order service for him. I had no authority to tell him what to do or anything else in this area. But I decided, I'd give a hand, and I'd give him some advice, but I had to do some research. And I said, I'll call you back. I got all the details. Let me do some research. I'll give you a call back. And I would say, less than an hour. My boss was ticked. She came in my office and started yelling at me. And she said, you're not treating a fellow employee right, and this guy really needs your help and everything else, and all you're doing is blowing him off. And I remember telling her, and she was a good boss. I don't know why she was upset that day. But I remember telling her that I just received the phone call within the last hour, and I'd get back to him as soon as possible. And she said, immediately get back to him. So I was kind of annoyed, to be honest with you. And I decided I'd play a little joke on the employee from Canada. I had nothing against Canadians, by the way. This had nothing to do with the fact that he was from Canada. It had everything to do with the fact that I had no responsibilities in Canada and I had a lot of work. And I was eventually going to get back to him, but probably not that day. But I decided, since he drove me nuts, I would make his life a little miserable. So I started calling him up on a regular basis, like every 15 minutes. And I would say, well, I haven't made any progress, but it's on my plate to do. And I'm making sure I'll get it done for you as soon as possible. 15 minutes later, same thing. Hey, Tom, or whatever his name was, I'll take care of this, and as soon as I possibly can, I'm working on it. Just give me a little bit more time. And it went on and on and on. And I would say that I thought I was just annoying this guy. But what happened was he called back to my boss, and he said apparently impressed my boss that he was very happy with my feedback. And she came in and she said, wow, this is wonderful. You really know how to deal with this person, and he's happy, and now I'm happy, and the boss's boss is happy, and everybody up to VP in the organization is happy. I learned a lesson that day, that sometimes just giving people feedback, even if it's silly feedback, even if you haven't made any progress, really helps them a lot understand, what's going on. It gives them a sense of comfort. I remember taking that illustration because that was to me, that was like, wow, this guy liked it. I was trying to annoy him, and he actually liked it. He didn't complain. Anyway, years later after that, after I started Nova, I had a wonderful person work for me in dispatch. She was really doing the best job she possibly could, and she was doing a pretty good job. And one of my senior, or I shouldn't say, one of my primary customers, big customers, was a national account that also had locations all throughout the United States, and we were on a regular basis, I would say, doing 2 or 3 projects a day for them, every single day, and really doing a lot. And this dispatcher of mine would call in every other day or every third day, or would email every once in a while and just tell that company what, our progress and everything else. And that seemed to be quite sufficient to me. It seemed, though, however, that no matter what she did, that we would get callbacks from that company, how angry they were at my dispatcher, and how lazy my dispatcher was. And to tell you the truth, the dispatcher is doing a great job. So what I did is I advised my dispatcher, and I said, what I want you to do is I want you to call around 10 o'clock in the morning, and I want you to tell the head of IT at this big corporation what you've done since yesterday and what you plan to do for the rest of the day. And then I want you to call back around 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I want you to reiterate what was being said, what was, what happened that day. And sure enough, after about a week, I got a phone call from the head of IT for that big corporation saying they didn't know what happened. Everything's turned around. This is wonderful, and this is wonderful. And, I learned a lesson in life that you got to communicate with people, and you got to communicate often with people, especially customers. If you plan to have something done by a certain time here, give updates. If it's Tuesday and you plan to have it done by Thursday, then give them a call or send them an email, tell them where you're at in that process. Numerous times I've talked to my project managers and found out that they were in a situation where things were being delayed, but they weren't communicating with the customer. And I thought, this is inappropriate. You need to communicate. Well, I have a problem, what they would say, and I would say, well, you know you have a problem, but the customer doesn't know you have a problem. Go call that IT department up and tell them about that install or that programming issue that we're having, and let them know you're having some difficulties. Communicate with them. And to tell you the truth, over-communicate with them. When you over-communicate, a lot of people like that. Now, you over-communicating when they start to complain to you. But if they're not complaining, then you're not communicating enough. That's the way I look at it. So you got to call them, you got to text them, let them know that things aren't going well or that they are going well. People who have bosses above them do not want surprises. They want heads up. They want to know what's going on so they can report to their boss. And that's what I've always taught my employees. You run into a problem, don't hide it. Tell the customer you have that problem. Let the customer know. Never hide problems. And if things are flowing along the way they're supposed to, then you give updates. It doesn't have to be every 15 minutes or every hour. That was silly, and I tried the hardest I could to annoy the guy personally, but he actually liked it. Strange. The next thing is that I use also is a thing called close the loop, and I use a little symbol here. I tell my employees, I say, always close the loop. And that is when you're given a responsibility by someone, a boss or a customer, then what you do is if you finish that responsibility, then you get back to the person and say, this is finished. If you delegate it to someone else, then you get to the original person and you tell them, I have delegated it to XYZ or this person over here, and they're going to handle it. And they have taken the ball from here. But I would still check back when the project's done to make sure it's done to their satisfaction. So to make the long story short, you always have to close that loop. You can't leave someone out there trying to figure out what you're doing. And this is a leadership principle. If you want to be in management, Heck, even if you don't want to be in management, you just want to do a great job and you want to get promoted and everything else, always keep your customer and your bosses and whoever else you communicate with in the loop concerning your projects, concerning your responsibility. Always let them know where you're at. Now, I always do a to-do list. And when I have meetings, I go through the to-do list and I give different people responsibilities. And I get them, I want them to report back to me when they run into a problem. And I often say, if something needs to be done by 4 o'clock, then you better be in my office by 2 o'clock if it isn't finished. And that gives me a chance to intervene to see if I can help you finish that project or that responsibility or whatever is going on. But if you wait to the very last moment, then you knock on my door and you say, hey, I didn't get this done in time. I apologize. That's too late, because now it's too late. I can't get the job done. So remember, not only communicate, but communicate in a timely manner. Communicate often. I would communicate as much until the customer is actually annoyed or your boss says, look, this is too much. You're giving me too much information. And then you know you're at the right level. So you may think you're communicating. You're not, unless you're getting that feedback. And then last of all, if you're a manager or a boss and you're giving new responsibilities to somebody and you're telling them, I want you to do this, this, and this, ABC, and you think they understood exactly what you said, you're wrong. This is when you supervise over and over again at the beginning of a task. Once the task is understood and the responsibility is grabbed by the person you delegated it to, then you only need occasional touches with that person's responsibility. But just because in your mind you think you have communicated doesn't mean that the other person has understood exactly what you are trying to say. I know this is pretty short. This is a leadership principle about communications and supervising people. But I've learned a lot over the years dealing with individuals about communication, and I'm sure there's more I need to learn. But I do appreciate when you watch my videos. Please give me a thumbs up on them, or, comment on them if you don't like them. I always read the comments. And also, please subscribe, and I can produce more of these videos. I just want to thank you for your time, and thank you for watching my video.